She had everything: awards, influence, power, but deep down something still felt hollow. Angelina Jolie's name echoed across the globe, yet inside there was a quiet storm, a yearning for peace that fame could never fill. Then came a decision that shook the media, but settled her heart. She accepted Islam, no announcements, no spotlight, just sincerity, and what followed wasn't chaos, it was calm, not worldly silence, but spiritual stillness. A kind of peace you can only taste when you finally stop running. She found beauty not in the mirror, but in submission. She realized that power isn't in controlling everything, it's in trusting the one who already does. And while some people walked away from her, she didn't walk alone. Because when you walk toward the truth walks toward you faster. She wasn't just looking for direction, she was searching for depth. And that's what a lot of people miss. It's not that we don't have goals or dreams, it's that, deep down, we're starving for something more meaningful, something that lasts when the noise dies down. For Angelina, Islam didn't come in as a rule book. It came like rain after a long, dry season. She didn't feel caged. She felt clear. You see, the world taught her how to chase. Chase roles, beauty standards, awards, headlines. But Islam taught her how to pause, how to receive, and that's powerful. Imagine living your whole life trying to keep up with people's expectations, and then one day you learn it's okay to let go. It's okay not to perform. It's okay to just be. That's what Islam gave her, a space to breathe again, a space where her value wasn't based on how she looked, what she achieved, or how many followers she had, but on the sincerity of her heart and the intention behind every step she took. That kind of shift doesn't happen overnight. It's not like she woke up one day and said, "I want to change everything." No, it was a series of moments, quiet ones, a question that lingered after the cameras shut off, a prayer she whispered when no one was listening, an emotion she couldn't explain when she heard the call to prayer echo in a distant place. It built slowly and gently, like dawn creeping over a horizon. And when it finally hit her, she didn't resist it. She surrendered. People think surrender is weak, but if you've ever tried to let go of control, ego, pride, you know how strong you have to be to really surrender. That's not weakness. That's courage. That's maturity. That's faith. For the first time in her life, she wasn't chasing a version of herself that the world wanted to see. She was meeting the version of herself that her soul was always meant to be. And it didn't come through scripts or spotlights. It came through silence, through reflection, through faith. There's something different about waking up in the morning and knowing that you don't need to prove anything to the world. You just need to stay aligned with your purpose, to be kind, to be mindful, to be grateful. That's it. And that simplicity, that's what Islam gave her. She began to see her life not as a collection of achievements, but as a series of tests, blessings, and chances to grow closer to something bigger than herself. She started seeing beauty in moments the old version of her would have overlooked. The softness of dawn, the rhythm of 5 daily prayers, the stillness in sujud, these weren't just rituals. They were lifelines, anchors. She realized that depth doesn't come from adding more to your life. It comes from removing what doesn't belong, what drains you, what distracts you, and slowly she let those things go, not out of fear, but out of love. Love for her peace, for her purpose, for her creator, and that shift, it showed, not just in the way she carried herself, but in the way she responded to life. There was less anxiety, less need to explain, less reaction, and more reflection. She became softer, but not weaker, more grounded, but not boring, more intentional, but not rigid. She started measuring her days not by how much she accomplished in the world's eyes, but by how present she was with her soul, how much she remembered the divine, how much she gave without expecting in return, how much she trusted when things didn't go her way, And that's what Islam teaches, this quiet kind of strength. A strength that's not flashy or loud, but firm, consistent, gentle. It teaches you that your worth is already written, that you don't need the world to validate what God has already honored in you. People noticed the change in her. Some couldn't understand it, some judged it, but the truth is, it didn't matter anymore. When your heart is finally aligned with the one who created it, the noise outside doesn't shake you the way it used to, and that's freedom. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was trying to improve herself, to purify her heart, to heal, and healing looks different when faith is involved. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just the quiet decision to walk away from anything that distances you from peace. And in a world that thrives on distraction, the courage to choose depth, to choose faith, is rare, but that's what she did. And every day she started waking up with something she hadn't felt in years: certainty. Certainty in where she was going, certainty in who she was becoming, certainty in who was guiding her. She didn't find this in a book of quotes or a meditation retreat. She found it in the verses of the Quran, in the stories of the prophets, in the resilience of the women of Islam. She found it in a faith that doesn't ask you to be perfect, just sincere, just willing to keep learning, willing to keep returning, willing to keep growing. And once she tasted that clarity, real clarity, there was no going back. The headlines tried to twist her story like they always do. Why would she change? What's the reason? Is this a phase? But she didn't bite. She didn't defend. She didn't post long captions or argue back on talk shows. She simply stayed quiet and focused, because once your heart finds peace, you don't feel the need to explain it to those who haven't felt it. She wasn't running from her past. She was stepping into something new, something real, and she knew. The people who truly understood didn't need an explanation, and the ones who demanded one wouldn't understand it anyway. That's the thing about faith. It doesn't need loud announcements. It grows in silence. It settles in the soul. It shows up in your actions, not your hashtags. And for her, Islam wasn't something she wore like an accessory. It was something she let reshape her from within. Of course, there were critics. That's the world we live in. People love a success story until that story doesn't serve their version of success anymore. And when a woman like her, bold, independent, celebrated, chooses a path that seems unfamiliar or uncomfortable to others, people start projecting. But instead of reacting, she chose a different kind of strength. She chose silence, not the kind that's weak or timid, but the kind that says, I know who I am now, and I don't need your permission to walk in that truth. There's a different kind of power in that, the kind that doesn't shout back because it doesn't have to. The kind that doesn't rush to clarify because peace doesn't panic. The kind that knows Allah sees the heart, and that's enough. See, when you've lived under a spotlight for decades, your instinct is to manage every rumor, every article, every whisper, but Islam taught her something different. It taught her to rise above the noise, to trust that clarity doesn't always require commentary, that Allah is al-Haq, the truth, and that truth defends itself. It's not that she didn't feel the pressure. Of course she did. She just didn't submit to it anymore. That's the power of submitting to God. You stop submitting to people. You stop chasing their approval like it's the air you breathe. Because now you're breathing a different kind of oxygen, one that comes with every ayah you reflect on, every prayer you whisper, every time you choose patience over pride. That shift, that calmness, it confused some people. They thought maybe she was hiding or retreating. But what they didn't understand was that this quiet wasn't a disappearance. It was a transformation. She wasn't shrinking. She was refining. She was trading noise for meaning. Clutter for clarity. She began responding to life, not reacting to it, and that's something only faith can teach you, because before Islam, the world told her, speak louder, fight harder, never let them win. But faith whispered, let go, trust, let Allah be your defender. In that kind of trust, that's not weak, it's warrior, level peace, because it takes strength to stay silent when your ego is screaming. It takes strength to step back when the world dares you to lash out. But she wasn't playing by the world's rules anymore. She was walking with something higher now, something that didn't just guide her, it grounded her. She started choosing peace over performance, purpose over popularity. In that quiet, steady strength, it wasn't loud enough for the headlines, but it was loud enough for her soul. That's all that mattered, and the people who were meant to understand, they saw it, they felt it. Some of them were inspired, some were curious, some even followed her path, not because she convinced them, but because they saw the light she carried without ever having to prove it. That's what happens when someone lives their truth with sincerity. They don't have to preach, they just are, and the quiet power of just being is what changes hearts. So many people today are exhausted from trying to be heard, trying to be liked, trying to be relevant. But here she was, quietly aligning her life with something ancient, something timeless, and finding more relevance in her sujud than in any spotlight. She taught us something without saying much. When you know your peace comes from Allah, the opinions of people lose their weight. You stop bending, you stop explaining, you stop exhausting yourself trying to convince the ones who are committed to misunderstanding you, because now you're focused, you've found your direction. You're not walking for applause anymore. You're walking for Jannah, and no one else gets to steer that journey but the one who gave you life. She used to think that freedom meant showing everything, your beauty, your thoughts, your strength. That to be powerful, you had to be exposed. That to be a woman in charge, you had to bear it all, physically, emotionally, publicly. But when Islam came into her life, it flipped that definition completely. What she used to see as liberation, she now recognized as a kind of pressure, a silent, constant demand to perform, to be seen, to please. Modesty, at first, felt unfamiliar, foreign, but not in a restrictive way. It felt like being handed a mirror that finally showed her what she truly was underneath all the layers society had painted on her. She realized modesty wasn't about hiding, it was about honoring. It was like finding something precious and deciding to protect it, not because you're afraid of the world seeing it, but because not everyone deserves access to everything sacred. In a world where your worth is often measured by how many eyes are on you, she started to find her value in the opposite, in the private moments, the hidden ones, the ones not posted, not performed. She began covering, not just with fabric, but with intention. She began shielding her energy, her space, her thoughts, and that act, choosing who gets to see you, know you, access you, it gave her a sense of control and dignity that no red carpet ever could. There's this quiet strength in modesty that the world doesn't understand. Because when you no longer need to be seen to feel valuable, you reclaim your power, and that's what started to happen. She felt more in control of her narrative, not because she was hiding from the world, but because she was finally showing up for herself. Not performing, not pleasing, just being, and the beauty of it. She didn't lose anything real. The people who loved her for her light stayed, and those who only came for the image, well, they faded. And that's okay. Sometimes the best way to know who's real is to stop performing, to let go of the masks, let go of the performance, just be, and see who's still standing next to you. She started walking differently, not just physically, but emotionally. Her steps were more grounded, her presence more centered. She wasn't distracted by trends, by praise, by criticism. She was becoming more rooted in her values, more clear about her boundaries. And that clarity, it came from her faith. Islam taught her that modesty wasn't just about clothing. It was a posture of the heart. It was about humility, yes, but also about self-respect. It taught her that the most beautiful parts of a person aren't meant for everyone. That intimacy, true intimacy, isn't found in public display, but in privacy, in trust, in commitment. And that realization changed the way she approached everything, from how she dressed to how she spoke, to who she gave her time and energy to. She no longer needed to shout her worth. She carried it silently, confidently, not because she thought she was better, but because she finally knew she was enough. Covered or not, praised or not, trending or not, she was enough. It's funny how the world preaches empowerment, but only within its own narrow terms. Show more, say more, give more. But when she chose less exposure, less noise, less external validation, that's when she felt the most powerful. Because it wasn't power given by people. It was power rooted in something divine, and that can't be taken away. She didn't abandon her past. She honored it, but she also evolved, and that evolution made some people uncomfortable. That's natural. When you stop living for the world's applause, the silence can feel strange. But she wasn't afraid of that silence anymore. She welcomed it, because in that silence she found herself. And what's more empowering than that, she no longer needed the world to call her strong. She felt strong. She didn't need to be labeled beautiful, to feel whole, because now her sense of beauty wasn't tied to the mirror. It was tied to her heart, to her intentions, to how much light she carried when no one was watching. And maybe that's the biggest shift of all. Before, she used to chase visibility. Now she was chasing sincerity. Before, it was all about how the world saw her. Now it was about how she stood in front of her Creator, alone, honest, bare. Soul that became her measure of success, that became her compass. So yes, she changed, but not in the way the tabloids speculated. She didn't lose herself. She found her true self, and she realized that sometimes the most radical thing a woman can do in this world is cover herself, guard her heart, lower her gaze, and walk with purpose. Not because she's weak, but because she finally knows her worth, and that kind of knowing, that kind of quiet, firm, unshakable knowing, that's what real freedom looks like. There's this idea floating around that when you choose faith, you somehow lose your strength. Like devotion is weakness. Like surrendering to something higher means you're giving up control. But if anything, she discovered the exact opposite. It was through surrender that she found her deepest strength. And it wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was a strength that came from being grounded in purpose, and it was unshakable. She'd spent years trying to do everything by herself, carrying the weight of her family, her career, her heartbreaks, her dreams, always appearing strong, always handling things, always moving forward, no matter what it cost her inside. But with faith, something shifted. She realized she didn't have to carry it all, that she was never supposed to, that the most powerful thing she could do was to place her trust in the one who never sleeps, never forgets, never makes mistakes. That trust, tawakkul, became her fuel, not in a blind, passive way, but in a deeply conscious, intentional way. It meant she still did her part, still showed up, still worked hard, but she stopped obsessing over every outcome. She stopped trying to control every detail, every reaction, every moment, and for the first time in a long time, she breathed, because faith gave her space, space to rest, space to feel, space to heal. It gave her permission to not be perfect, to not have all the answers, to not always be the strong one. And somehow, in that softness, she found a strength more solid than anything she'd known before. It wasn't that life got easier. In fact, things still came at her. Disappointments, setbacks, harsh words from people who didn't understand her transformation. But now she didn't break so easily, because her heart wasn't exposed the way it used to be. It was guarded now, not with walls, but with prayer, with intention, with trust. She began praying, not just in times of crisis, but in the quiet hours when no one was watching, and those moments weren't performative. They were personal, sacred. She'd whisper things to her Lord she'd never said out loud to anyone. Dreams, doubts, regrets, hopes. It became her release, her refuge, a secret strength she carried with her everywhere. There's something incredible that happens when you go from being known by the world to being known by the one who created you. Your entire focus shifts. Your definition of success transforms. It's no longer about awards or applause, it's about alignment. Integrity, inner peace. People didn't see the whole picture. They only saw what the media captured, what they could click or comment on. But behind the scenes, she was rebuilding not her brand, but her soul. She was learning to walk in obedience even when it was hard, even when it was unpopular, even when it cost her certain relationships or roles or opportunities. But what she gained was far greater, because obedience isn't a chain, it's a compass. It points you toward peace, toward clarity, toward what truly matters. And she started making choices not based on pressure, but on principle, not on hype, but on truth. And that truth, it started setting her free in ways she didn't even know she needed. Free from people's opinions, free from old habits, free from chasing perfection. She could finally exhale, not because everything was perfect on the outside, but because she'd stopped fighting the truth inside. She'd learned to submit, not in weakness, but in wisdom, and that submission became her sanctuary. It reminded her that she wasn't in this world to impress it. She was in it to worship, to serve, to grow, to give. And that mindset flipped everything. Suddenly, her ambitions had a higher aim. Her voice carried more weight, not because it was louder, but because it was sincere, aligned, coming from a heart that had finally found something real to hold on to. And that kind of woman, that kind of focus, you can't shake her, because she's not just standing on talent or image or reputation. She's standing on truth. She's rooted in purpose, and people can feel that. Even if they don't understand it, they sense it. And sometimes that quiet certainty speaks louder than any speech ever could. Faith gave her discipline, too, not in the strict, suffocating way people imagine, but in the liberating, clarifying kind of way. She started protecting her time, her eyes, her words. She stopped entertaining conversations that didn't serve her growth. She stopped engaging in energy that drained her spirit. And every time she made those choices, she felt stronger, lighter, clearer. She learned that real freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's having the strength to walk away from what doesn't align with your values. That obedience to God doesn't limit you. It elevates you. It protects you. It restores you. And that realization, that's what took her power to another level. Because now her strength wasn't coming from a place of ego. It was coming from a place of alignment. And that kind of strength doesn't break under pressure. It expands. It uplifts. It inspires. She still had dreams, still had goals, but now they were rooted in something far deeper. She wanted legacy, not just fame. She wanted impact, not just influence, and she was willing to build that slowly, quietly, intentionally, because now she trusted the timing, trusted the process, trusted the one writing her story. And when you reach that point, where your strength doesn't come from the world, but from your surrender to something higher, you become unstoppable in a different kind of way. She didn't expect that choosing a new path would come with so much noise. People started talking, some curious, some confused, others critical. Headlines spun their own stories. People she hadn't heard from in years suddenly had opinions about her. but deep down, she had already made peace with the fact that not everyone would understand. Because the truth is, when you decide to change, when you finally start walking in a direction that's different from what the world expects, people won't know how to handle it, and that's okay. Growth is like that. It doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with distance, with silence, with people leaving because they liked the old version of you better, the one that made them comfortable, the one that fit their expectations. But she wasn't trying to fit anymore, she was trying to become. So instead of shrinking to keep others at ease, she started choosing herself. She started standing in her new truth, even when it felt a little shaky. And that's the thing about growth. It's not always loud and confident in the beginning. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it's just you and God and the prayer you whisper through tears, asking for strength to keep going. She found comfort in that, in knowing that every time she lost something, a connection, a gig, a relationship, she gained something deeper. She gained clarity, she gained faith, she gained peace, and those things you can't put a price on. People asked her if she regretted anything, if it felt like she gave up too much, but in her heart she knew she didn't give up anything real. What she left behind were things that were never truly hers to begin with: expectations, projections, pressure. What she gained was authenticity, a deeper connection to her Creator, a simpler, more intentional life. And maybe that's what more people are looking for, deep down, not perfection, not a curated image, but peace, a feeling of being held, of being seen not for what you do or how you look, but for who you are at your core. Islam gave her that, a way to live with intention, a way to connect with her soul, with her purpose. She started building her life differently, less noise, more meaning. She said no to things that drained her and yes to things that aligned with her values. She didn't need to be everywhere anymore. She just needed to be where she felt connected, to herself, to her faith, to what truly matters. And the beautiful part, the more she stood in her truth, the more she inspired others, quietly, naturally, not with big speeches, but with the way she carried herself, the way she listened more, the way she gave generously, the way she walked with dignity. That's what faith does. It humbles you. It makes you softer in all the right ways, but it also strengthens your backbone. It reminds you that you were created for something bigger than just being liked. And yeah, people still talk. That hasn't changed, but her heart has, her focus has. She's not here to explain herself to everyone. She's here to live in a way that feels right with God, that feels honest, that brings light. She hopes that others who feel lost or unsure can see that there's a way out of the noise, that there's a way to come home to yourself, that it's okay to change, that it's okay to want more. Not more fame, not more money, but more peace, more truth, more depth. And maybe, just maybe, if you've ever felt that pull in your heart, that whisper that says there's something more waiting for you, don't ignore it. That might be your moment, your opening, your invitation to come closer to something greater. Faith isn't about being perfect. It's about being real, and when you come with sincerity, even in your mess, even in your confusion, you'll be met with mercy, with patience, with love. That's what she found. Not judgment, not shame, just space to grow, to learn, to heal. And she knows if it happened for her, it can happen for anyone. Sometimes we search the whole world for answers that are already inside us. We chase after clarity through books, people, places, trying to quiet that unsettled feeling that there's still something missing. And for her, that moment of realization came when she stopped searching outward and turned inward. That's where things began to shift, when she stopped asking the world who she should be and started asking her Creator who she was meant to be. And that's the beauty of a spiritual journey. It doesn't always begin with fireworks or some dramatic awakening. Sometimes it starts quietly, with a question, with discomfort, with a longing you can't quite name. And maybe that's what led her to this path in the first place. Not a grand decision, but a series of small moments, a series of gentle nudges in the direction of truth, of stillness, of something real. One of the most powerful things she realized was that knowledge isn't just about collecting information, it's about transforming your heart. You can learn about 1,000 ideas, read every sacred text, attend every lecture, but if it doesn't soften you, if it doesn't bring you closer to compassion, to purpose, to peace, then what is it really doing? That's what this new chapter of her life taught her. Islam wasn't just about rituals or rules. It was about understanding, about connection. Every piece of knowledge she gained wasn't there to burden her. It was there to lift her, to guide her back to who she really is. And that felt different from anything she'd ever experienced before. She started to realize that true power isn't in always being seen, it's in being aware, aware of your actions, your intentions, your influence, and suddenly things she used to overlook became sacred. The way she spoke to others, the energy she brought into a room, the decisions she made when no one was watching. It all mattered, because now it wasn't about external validation. It was about internal accountability, and that shift, it brought so much freedom, because now she didn't need to prove herself anymore. Not to the media, not to the industry, not to strangers online. She just needed to live in a way that honored the journey she was on, a way that honored the one who guided her there. She started reading more, not just surface-level articles, but deep, meaningful knowledge, learning the why behind the what, understanding the wisdom behind the prayers, the patience behind the discipline, the mercy behind the boundaries. And every time she uncovered something new, it felt like a piece of her soul was waking up. And the more she learned, the more she felt this quiet confidence growing inside her, not arrogance, not superiority, but a kind of calm assurance that said, I know who I am now, I know who I serve, I know what matters. That kind of clarity is priceless. And here's the thing, she's still learning, still growing, still getting things wrong sometimes, but the difference now is that she knows she's not doing it alone. Every step she takes is guided, every mistake becomes a lesson. Every challenge becomes a doorway to more understanding, more closeness, more gratitude, and that gratitude, it started showing up everywhere, in the way she spoke to her children, in the way she appreciated small moments, in the way she made time for reflection even in the middle of her busy days. Because once you start walking this path, once you taste the sweetness of sincerity, you begin to see life through an entirely different lens. You stop chasing noise and start embracing meaning. She began giving more, not because it looked good, not because it would trend, but because her heart wanted to, because she realized every act of kindness was a seed, and she wanted to plant as many as possible for this life and the next. She also learned to be patient with herself, to accept that change takes time, that understanding doesn't happen overnight, that you can have questions, doubts, struggles, and still be on the right path. That growth isn't always about rising fast, it's about staying rooted, and that kind of patience, that comes from knowing that there's wisdom in the timing of everything, that God never rushes your story, that He unfolds it in ways that are meant just for you, and the more you trust that, the less pressure you feel to have it all figured out. And maybe that's what someone needs to hear today, that it's okay to be in between. It's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to just be curious, to just explore, to just feel that maybe there's something more waiting for you, because there is this journey she's on. It's not about being perfect. It's about being honest, about having the courage to ask hard questions, about being willing to unlearn and relearn, about listening, not just with your ears but with your heart. And if you've ever felt that tug, that quiet pull towards something deeper, don't silence it. That might be the beginning of your own transformation. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to change overnight. You just have to be open. Because when the heart is open, even the smallest bit of truth can light up your entire world. And maybe this journey isn't just hers. Maybe this message is reaching you for a reason. If someone with the world at her feet felt something missing, and found it in Islam, what might you find if you took just one sincere step? Islam is not a religion of pressure. It's a call, a door, a light, and that light, it's for everyone who seeks it. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real, ask questions, explore, reflect. And maybe one day you'll find what she found, peace that doesn't come from outside, but rises from within.